Hi everyone and welcome back. If you're new, then a massive welcome to you. My name is Dr. Baptiste and I currently work as a portfolio GP. In this video, we'll be hearing from Dr. Jacqui Philips, who is a newly qualified GP. She passed the RCA first time and she's going to be sharing with you 5 of her top tips so that you can pass first time too. As always, if you gained value from this video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get into the video.
Hi everyone, my name is Jacqui. I am a newly qualified GP. I qualified in June 2021, and just before qualifying I obviously sat this RCA exam. So this video is my perspective, my top 5 tips on how I managed to pass the RCA exam first time. When I sat the exam, it was quite a new exam. It still is quite a new exam, so there's not that much information out there compared to the CSA. So I'm really pleased there's videos like this available to help GP trainees and aspiring doctors work out how to approach the RCA. So without further ado, I'll go into my top 5 tips on how I passed the exam. And before I start, I just want to say that since I've done the exam, there probably have been a few minor changes, but my first tip is actually get to know the exam. So I would just go on the RCGP website, look at the current guidance for the exam, look at what the mandatory criteria is, get to know the exam really well before you start recording. So you have an idea of what to expect, what they're expecting from you, what's the marking scheme. So that's my first tip, is get to know the exam, look at what the official guidance is out there. There are lots of other resources as well. So 14 Fish, for example, is the platform you'll be using to record and submit your exam. So make sure you look at the 14 Fish website and the forums on there, and they're really useful as well. So first tip is get to know the RCA exam. My second tip would be, unlike me, start early, practice early. Even if you're not sure when you're going to do the exam, just familiarize yourself with the 14 Fish platform, use it to record and practice. So when you start seeing patients, I don't know what stage of training you'll be, how experienced you are, but just practice with the 14 Fish platform, record a few consultations, whether you think they're going to be useful or not, because just the process of recording will help you understand how the exam works. You will learn from your mistakes. Don't be afraid to use up your minutes. You can buy more minutes if you run out. I think when I started, you got 200 minutes complimentary just as soon as you sign up for the 14 Fish portfolio, and you could use it for things like your assessments. When you're speaking to your trainer, you can use those recordings for assessments, so they won't go to waste. So just record early. You can't submit the cases you've used for assessments for the exam, so make sure that you're only using assessments on cases you know you won't submit for the exam. So start early, practice, be prepared. It's my second tip. My third tip is on a practical aspect, really, of how to, when you're actually recording, what kind of things can you use at the time to help you record each case. So the things I use that I found really helpful is I made my own crib sheet. So things I often forget, things like making sure I introduce myself. You think it comes naturally, but sometimes when you're flustered, you forget. So just list on your crib sheet things that maybe you often forget, or things that you want to remind yourself. Have I covered the red flags? Have I safety netted properly? Have I done follow-up? Have I given a patient information leaflet? All those little things that will pick marks up for the exam. Make sure you put them on your crib sheet so that as you're speaking to your patient, you can quickly look down your crib sheet and make sure that you've ticked all of those boxes. Other practical things about recording is make sure you put a sign on your door saying do not disturb, so that members of staff don't knock on your door mid-recording. That's happened to me during a brilliant recording, and I had to discard it because I was so flustered afterwards that I just didn't finish in time. So make sure the practice are aware that you're recording. You have do not disturb sign up, maybe an agreement with the reception staff or admin staff not to screen message you with urgent messages, things like that. So make sure that you're in the recording mode. And also just make the practice aware about what the exam involves, how much money it's going to cost you. You can't just fail this exam. You've got to really focus. Make sure they're supporting you as well. Make sure your trainer understands what it involves. So as long as you get to know the exam, you can help the practice get to know the exam as well, and how they can support you, whether that be selecting patients for you, whether that be giving you special recording slots so you have a bit of extra time on either side of your recording, to do admin and things like that. So yeah, it can be a really stressful exam, to try and get as much support as you can. I think that was my third tip. Oh, and also not to forget to keep a timer as well. As soon as you introduce yourself and get consent from the patient, press that the start timer, so that you're aware of the time ticking, because sometimes when you're in mid-flow, you forget yourself and you forget that actually it's a timed exam and you need to complete this consultation within the 10 to 12 minutes. So make sure you've got a visible timer to keep you on track. So my fourth tip is something, again, I didn't do early enough, is to keep a record of all of your recordings, the problem that you've discussed, for example, the age of the patient. So if it's a child, adult, older adult, if it's an emergency, an acute case, or if it's a respiratory case, because there's lots of ways you can select your cases for the exam. When you get to the end and you're about to submit, you have hundreds, dozens of cases that you have sorted out. So if you keep a track as you go along of, you know, the types of cases you've recorded, I would also, what I did towards the end is I scored myself and I made a note of the score as well, so that you can try, it will help you select at the end, because otherwise it's really tricky to sift through all of that. So mark yourself, keep a record of all the cases. And if your trainer has listened to any of the cases and given you feedback, make a note of that feedback on this list that you've got, so that when it comes to the end, you can figure out, do I want to submit case A over case B? You'll see what feedback your trainer gave you, what mark you gave yourself, and it will help you select which case is the best one to put forward. And my final tip, my fifth tip, is to, if you can, if you're in a position in your BTS to form a study group, then I would form a study group, because that was probably my saving grace for this exam. Being able to you know, discuss cases with other trainees going through the same exam, being able to practice with each other, feedback on how you've approached certain problems. Maybe if you're finding that I can't keep my mental health consultation to 12 minutes, how are you guys managing it? You can share tips and ideas. So use your peers who are doing the exam, try and help each other. Previously with the CSA, you would be practicing with the group, so it's not quite the same with the RCA, but you can still share with each other, listen to each other's recordings, give each other feedback, and help mark each other's recordings. So that was really helpful for me as well. And also use your tutor to help mark your recordings. Use other GPs in the practice who have time, if they're willing to listen to the recordings with you, to get a different perspective. So just try and get as much feedback as possible, because sometimes it's so difficult to choose which case shall I put forward. Was that better than that? So sometimes having a bit of outside perspective can help. So I think those are my top 5 tips. Those of you who are sitting the exam or about to sit the exam, best of luck. I know how stressful it can be. You've got this. Hopefully these tips will help you for the rest of your preparation. Thank you.
So those were some amazing tips from Dr. Jacqui Philips. I hope you found them useful. Good luck with your exam. I'm sure you can pass first time. However, if you don't happen to pass first time, then I have a video on how to overcome failure so you can pass the second time. As always, if you gained value from this video, then be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Why not share it with a friend or a colleague? All the best. I'll see you in the next one.